Okay, hello everybody. Jono here from the Fitness Education Online podcast, and I'm super excited because we've got a very special guest on the line this week talking about a very special topic as well. I'll introduce him now, and then we'll get into a bit more what we're going to talk about. It's Mr. Jason King from PD Warrior. Jason, how are you?
G'day, Jono. I'm good, mate. Thanks for having me on. As I was just chatting to you before, this is my first podcast experience, so I'm excited to give it a crack and have some fun with it.
No, I'm excited too. I'm not sure if you know how I found out about you, but I wanted to have a guest on this topic here, and I did some googling. I went on the Fitness Australia website, and I'm like, surely there's some people that are running courses for people with trainers that want to get more in depth with people with Parkinson's.
Yep.
And yours was actually the only one there. The only one on the Fitness Australia website. I'm like, this can't be right. I did a bit more Googling, a bit more deeper, and there's another mob that's doing some boxing sort of stuff. I don't think it's an accredited course with Fitness Australia, but they're doing some good stuff as well. But it was literally, when it comes to this field here, this guy's leading the country, I'm going to say. The course is probably the leading course in the country. Would you agree with that?
Oh, mate, I'll take the rap. Absolutely. I mean, PD Warrior in general is, we're trying to be, as you said, sort of the pioneers and the home of Parkinson's. We're trying to, it started off, PD Warrior started off more so for allied health professionals. So I'm an exercise physiologist by trade. We started off running courses for physios and exercise physiologists. And then the creator of PD Warrior, Melissa McConaughey, and I were discussing, and we realized that there's a massive gap here in terms of the fitness professionals and sort of upskilling fitness professionals and personal trainers in the field of Parkinson's. So we decided to create a course. So I've created a course for, just as I said, upskilling personal trainers and fitness professionals in terms of what to look out for Parkinson's and kind of just trying to shape the fitness professional role in Parkinson's, which I'm sure we'll discuss as we crack on.
Yeah, 100%. And if even from now, if you're listening to this as a fitness professional and you're like, all right, I want to do this course, I'll put the link down in the show notes. So you can just go right away, have a look at the course, go from there. And we'll speak about it more throughout the podcast. Before we get into that, Jason, do you want to tell us a little bit about Parkinson's in general? So not even so much from, what a personal trainer is going to do or not do, or about the course, just what is Parkinson's in general in a nutshell? What does it look like? What are the symptoms? What are the signs? What are the stats? What can you tell us about Parkinson's in general?
Yeah, of course. Well, I think probably the best thing to do is throw a few stats at you first, because it kind of puts a little bit into perspective in terms of the reason why we need to know about this and the reason we need to sort of prepare all health and fitness professionals. So, and as I said to you earlier, it was a good excuse for me to actually go back through and look at the latest stats and to have a look at the prevalence. But to quote a few of the stats that I looked up the other day, so 1 in 308 people in Australia have been diagnosed with Parkinson's.
Really?
And that, so quite, and I think that's one of the common misconceptions that, people consider it to be probably quite a rare disease, but actually, 1 in 308 in Australia, and people over the age of 60, that goes down to 1 in 100. So quite common, obviously, as our aging population grows as well. So that works out to be 37 new diagnoses or 37 new diagnoses of Parkinson's every day. Works out 80,000 people living in Australia, approximately 80,000 people living in Australia with Parkinson's. And where the fitness professional, and I know we've talked about this a bit later on, but 18% of those people are with Parkinson's are working age, so under 50. And this is where, as I said, we'll talk about a bit later on, but where the fitness professional and personal trainers can really sort of come into the fold. It's almost considered at the moment, and people are sort of debating the terminology of this, but we're almost in a Parkinson's pandemic. So I was looking up the sort of the growing number and why, and again, this is going to sort of lead into why this is so important to upskill as many people as we can. But from 1990 to 2015, the amount of people in the world doubled to 6 million, and they estimate that by 2040 there's going to be 17 million people worldwide living with Parkinson's disease. So that's due to the aging population, as we said, increased industrialization, and also just improved diagnosis. So yes, we might have more people living with it, but maybe undiagnosed. So by 2040, they're estimating about 17.5 million people will be living with this disease. So it's actually growing at an exponential rate, hence why they're sort of referring to it as a pandemic. And the financial cost of that, the other thing, I know, it's not that relevant to health professionals, but just to put a number on it, they reckon at in 2018, the economic cost was 12.3 billion for Parkinson's disease, which is on par with cancer. So it's growing. It's we're trying to figure out why it's growing. We're still trying to figure out the cause, which is obviously hopefully going to lead to a cure. But that's the sort of incidence and prevalence of Parkinson's, and then I suppose now I can chat a little bit about what it actually looks like. I think most people probably, you know, Michael J. Fox was a big sort of pioneer in this and really sort of brought Parkinson's front of mind to a lot of people. But I think a lot of people would consider and think of Parkinson's just as the tremor. You know, they don't see, first of all, they definitely wouldn't probably be aware of all the non-motor symptoms, but they would probably associate it just with that sort of tremor. To sort of wrap Parkinson's up, it's a movement disorder. And something that I always try and get across to my patients, which can be quite uplifting, is that there actually isn't any, Parkinson's doesn't attack the muscles. It doesn't attack any of those sort of motor outputs. The only thing Parkinson's is affecting is the messaging system between brain and muscle. And essentially it's an underscaling or a scaling down of movement. So the main symptoms, and we tend to, with PD Warrior, we tend to classify our patients into one of three categories, and you know, the Venn diagram crosses over a little bit, but the general sort of hallmarks of bradykinesia, so that's small and slow sort of shuffling movement, and as I said, that's that underscaling of movement. Tremor is the other sort of common, most obvious hallmark, I guess you could say, and also agility impaired. So further down the track, our patients tend to get a little bit more postural instability, balance tends to go, and that's where sort of bradykinesia can sort of manifest more as festination of gait or freezing. So it'll be like their feet are stuck to the floor, shuffle, shuffle, shuffle. They're really having trouble initiating gait. So that's what we refer to as freezing. So those are the main sort of three. If I had to sort of put all symptoms into sort of three categories: the bradykinesia, small shuffling movement, tremor, and agility impaired. But we're really just scratching the surface there. As the disease progresses and as medication becomes more of a long-term sort of thing for people, and they've been taking levodopa and other medications for a longer time, they start to develop dyskinesia. So that is abnormal muscle movement or uncontrolled muscle movement. Rigidity is another big thing, particularly in the trunk. So you might notice people, and now I'm so in tune with it, I can walk down the street and I can see people, and you sort of think, oh, I wonder if they've got Parkinson's, because they walk with a very rigid trunk, not a lot of rotation, not a lot of arm swing. So rigidity is a big thing. Dystonia, which is that sort of, think of the worst cramp you've ever had times by 100 and then switch it on for 20 or 30 minutes. So those prolonged uncontrolled muscle contractions. And apraxia, which is what we refer to as that lack of motor planning. And that comes back again to that, I won't go to the pathophysiology too much, but because of the damage to the basal ganglia, which is our sort of control center in the brain, and essentially in a normal brain, cortex sends a message to the basal ganglia. Basal ganglia is the control center. It controls the speed of movement, the coordination, and it's also responsible for our learned motor pattern. So message goes to basal ganglia, it punches away at the computer, sends it back to the cortex, back to the or down the spinal cord for a smooth muscle contraction. With Parkinson's, and I am diving in a little bit to the pathophysiology, but I think it's probably important to get a bit of an overview of it. With a Parkinson's brain, there is I won't say damage, but there's loss of dopamine, and there's a loss of dopaminergic neurons in that basal ganglia. So that basal ganglia is faulty. Message then goes from cortex down to basal ganglia. That control center isn't working properly, sends the message back to the cortex, and that message is undercooked or underdone. So what we end up with this uncontrolled, uncoordinated, and underscaled movement. So that's where that lack of motor planning, the bradykinesia, and all those sorts of symptoms come into it, because we're getting this underscaled movement. And again, I think a lot of the people a lot of the newly diagnosed patients I see, they would, and I think I would assume as well, that there's something wrong with my muscles. I used to be strong. I used to be able to stand up. I used to be able to reach high, do all those things, but now everything feels heavy and weak. And it can be quite a liberating sort of thing for them to hear, is actually the muscles aren't, maybe they're weaker through probably disuse and a lack of activity, due to the Parkinson's, but actually the muscle fibers themselves are as strong as ever. It's just that signaling, and what we've got to try and do is recalibrate that signal and get them to over exaggerate their movements and sort of fight back. Parkinson's is in a way watering down their movement and watering down that output. So to fight that, it's pretty simple. We've just got to think big and over exaggerate that movement so that we can recalibrate and still achieve that nice, smooth, controlled and large movement, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, for sure. Awesome. All right, cool. And does it get, were you going to give us one more, or was that the major of the symptoms there?
So those are motor symptoms, and those are the ones that we obviously see. They're visible to us and visible for patients, loved ones, and themselves as well. But one of the things that I'm trying to get better at as well is exploring their non-motor symptoms. And oftentimes, especially with newer diagnosed patients, the non-motor symptoms can actually be more detrimental to their quality of life than the motor symptoms. So just to list off a couple of the non-motor symptoms that are associated with Parkinson's: so depression, anxiety, apathy, cognitive impairment, which is a big one, which again feeds into the way how well they move and their motor planning and things like that. So there's a lot, again, sort of circling back to that apraxia and lack of motor planning. There's also a loss of automaticity, and what that leads to is a difficulty in dual tasking. So if we ask our patient to walk across the road, probably not too bad. They might have a little bit of a shuffly gait, but they're also having a scan. They're also looking down, stepping down the curve. So their normal nice arm swing and stride is impacted because they're having to juggle all these other things. Whereas you and I, without Parkinson's, we can juggle all those things and keep up our nice, good quality gait. So dual tasking is something that we try and practice a lot as well. And again, that comes with the cognitive impairment. There's people often complain of constipation. There's autonomic nervous system dysfunction. Sleep disturbance is a big one as well. And all of this, even though there are things going on behind the scenes, they all impact on their motor symptoms and their mobility as well. So it's something that just even as physios and exercise physiologists, we have to look out for, and definitely the fitness professional should be aware of that as well. Just because, as I said, it can actually be more debilitating, especially for those newer diagnosed and the younger people. It can be more debilitating to their quality of life than their motor symptoms in some cases.
Yes, no, it makes sense. All right, cool. Well, let's transition to the exercise side of things now, Jason. Now, even just a lot of those symptoms there, I'm looking at them like, okay, yeah, exercise could help with that. Yeah, exercise could help with that. Oh, we're going to have to be a little bit careful around that there. I'm going to hand it over to you. Let's maybe do a situation. Let's say a newly diagnosed person with Parkinson's walks into a gym. They're like, right, I've just been diagnosed with Parkinson's. The doctor says it's a good idea. Well, actually, let's go further. What would happen? I'm guessing the doctor would send them to a neurologist. A neurologist diagnoses them. Is there any sort of, would the neurologist send them to a physio or an exercise physiologist, or would they just say, hey, go and exercise? From a newly diagnosed person, what usually would happen there?
So 20 years ago, I would say the neurologist would say, okay, 20 years ago might be a little bit harsh, maybe 20, 30 years ago, the neurologist would probably say, okay, there's not much we can do. It would have been a pretty awful time to be diagnosed, because they weren't really on top of what we can do symptom wise. They would have been prescribed medication to help with the symptoms, and they probably would have been told just to rest, don't overdo it, don't exert yourself. And in 20, 30 years, that has completely switched. So ideal scenario, you're a neurologist, to give our course a plug again, the neurologist would send them to Advance Rehab Centre or PD Warrior. And a lot of our, we're based in Sydney and Artarmon, and a lot of the neurologists in that area, because of the feedback and that they've got from patients and the results they've seen, that are more than willing straight away just to send them to us. So that's the ideal scenario, that the neurologist will diagnose the patient, and then obviously if they're at the stage where they need medication, start working on that juggling act as well. But then send them, as you said, to a physio and exercise physiologist, and hopefully that person is trained up with PD Warrior and savvy with the best practice and what we need to be doing. So I suppose the question is, if they walk into a gym, hopefully they've already been, sorry,
Yeah,
go on.
well, let's go a step there. So if they walk into a gym, they've definitely seen a neurologist.
Mhm.
They would have probably, would they have definitely seen at least some exercise physiologist or physio? Would the neurologist have said, hey, the next step is you need to do some exercise? Either go and Google an exercise physiologist, or here's a list of my connections, or physio. Would that happen? Do they always do that, or?
I would say so. I would say so.
Okay.
Majority of the time, yeah, you'd hope so. The newer, I won't say the newer neurologists, but the ones that are a little bit more progressive, I would say would definitely sort of start going down that route and the exercise route, whether it's through a physio or exercise physiologist. Yeah, so I would say 99% of the time, yeah, they would go through an allied health professional to start with. And then I suppose where it arcs off, and again, we can talk about this when we speak a little bit more about the fitness professional and personal trainer role, but where it would sort of split is if there is someone that is quite young, still working aged, they might get a review from their physio or EP every 6 months or so, and hopefully they're already exercising, so they're under the control of a personal trainer.
Yep.
That personal trainer hopefully has nice dialogue with reviewing sort of physio or EP, and they can continue that way. So that's for the younger person who isn't showing too many symptoms, balance isn't affected, and obviously that is right in that wheelhouse and in the scope of practice for a personal trainer or fitness professional. The other sort of arc, or the other sort of diversion of that, is someone that is further progressed with the disease, is starting to fall, is starting to get bilateral involvement of the disease, and that's where maybe they would probably stick more under the control of a physio or EP. Again, this is not a one-way path, and what we really love to see is that, we're doing the reviews for someone and go, okay, you're going to come in and do our group class once a week. You're going to come and do a one-on-one with us once a week, but then you're going to go back to the gym and do your personal training or do your boxing class or whatever it is. So, it's a multidisciplinary team, and we want everyone working together, for the same goals.
Okay, let's spend a minute there so I can get my head around this and the listeners as well. So let's say there's the newly diagnosed person. They go and see a neurologist, right? The neurologist sends them to an exercise physiologist, ideally a PT warrior one.
Yep.
And let's say they're newly diagnosed. The exercise physiologist might be like, all right, cool. Yep, I've done a test. Here's where you are at the moment. Here's a program I want you to do for the next 12 weeks. Come and see me in 12 weeks time and we'll see how we're going. And then that person may go to the gym and do the program, and it's only going to help whether they hire a personal trainer and the personal trainer runs them through that program, or even if it's just, there's a trainer on the gym floor, and at least the person might go to that trainer and be like, all right, hey, here's the program. Am I doing it right? Yada, yada, yada. It would look something like that in that circumstance.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think probably if we break down, if we're going on the tangent of a newly diagnosed and someone that isn't showing too many symptoms, quite active still, there's like, I suppose you could break it off into three areas of exercise where we'd be directing them. So where the exercise physiologists and the physios, and where we sort of push the PD warrior is in those big high amplitude exercises. So, if you spotted someone in the gym that was doing big movements with their arms, even without weights, TheraBand work, doing some sort of agility exercise, they're probably the ones that, catching your eye going, what are they doing? They're the ones doing PD warrior. So the exercises look quite different. So it's not going to be as straightforward if someone had a program and then went to a personal trainer and said, these are my exercises, because they'd probably look at them and go, I've never heard of all these things. Our exercises, they're quite novel in nature. They're called Tada, Box Step, 007. It's all about being big, over exaggerating their movement. We look at powerful stepping, so initiating their gait. We look at moving to the trunk, so and looking at their rigidity. If they're tremor dominant, we're looking at nice big explosive movements through their hands. So where we sort of guide our exercise all comes back to the symptoms they're showing, and obviously their goals. Like with any condition or any patient, we have to look at their goals and the individual themselves. It's not really a cookie cutter approach. We really want to try and figure out what works for that patient and what's troubling that patient in terms of their Parkinson's and in terms of their goals as well. So I know it's sort of digressing a bit there, but to come back to those three main areas. So one is the PD warrior, and that's our sort of amplitude-based, big, powerful exercises. And the other two areas that are really important for PD is resistance training, which is going more and more evidence, and cardiovascular training. So the research is showing for resistance training that we can improve the bradykinesia, so it can improve that small sort of slow movement, improves gait speed and gait initiation, like we talked about before. And I think that they were looking at improving the balance as well with resistance training. Obviously, it comes down to how specific you are. Cardiovascular training, they looked at studies on cognition, and they've shown that with Parkinson's, that can actually improve memory and executive function, and a combination of resistance and cardiovascular training can improve global cognitive function as well, which again is one of those things for some people might be their number one concern, is their cognitive functioning. So I guess we look at it as a three-pronged attack: resistance training, cardio training, and our big amplitude training. It's important, I suppose, to mention that when we're looking at improving Parkinson's and slowing the disease down, it has to be neuroactive and it has to be neuroplastic exercise training. So your resistance training and your cardio training, although really beneficial, might not be firing off those neurons. We might not be recalibrating the brain unless they're working. You know, there's ways we can do that. You know, for instance, with cardio training, we can get them doing some HIIT training, really working above their self-selected pace, and resistance training, we can look at some more power-based movements. So that's where those two sort of modes of exercise can, I guess, fall into neuroplastic and neuroactive exercise. But the number one thing that people need to be working on is neuroactive exercise. So going for a walk around the block, unfortunately, yes, going to be great to keep yourself fit, keep yourself active, and and potentially ward off those other comorbidities that come with decreased activity, but not enough to slow down your Parkinson's, not enough to affect your symptoms. And this is where the PD warrior style exercises are really important. They've got to be over the top. They've got to be exaggerated. And as I said, it's all about recalibrating the brain. So it's a very different way of coaching. It's all about quality rather than quantity. So, I'll always say to my patients, I'd rather, 5 really, really good repetitions at your maximum rate of perceived exertion, max power, max control and focus is far more valuable than 50 average ones.
Yes.
Okay, so quality is really, really important. And this is something I talk about a little bit more in depth in my course, is that the way we coach our Parkinson's patients and the way we go about prescribing exercise is very different to how you would for someone, for your general sort of healthy population. Yes, obviously in the gym, we're looking at quality and good form and everything like that, but it really takes precedent when we're talking about PD warrior and Parkinson's exercise. It has to be the number one focus is good quality movement.
Yes, important. Okay, good takeaway there for all the listeners. Now, there's a few ways I want to go from here, Jason.
Yep.
We think of the best way to do it. Where should we start? All right, let's start with, I guess, the improving Parkinson's versus slowing down Parkinson's. Wow. In your programs and exercise in general, are we slowing down Parkinson's, or can we improve where someone's at? What can you tell us around that side of things there?
Yeah, great question. Because I reckon dating, I'm only 30, so I can't speak for what was happening 30 years ago. But from all things, from looking at the research and discussing with my colleagues, 20 years ago, if you'd spoken to a neurologist and said, I've got this Parkinson's patient and they've improved in the last 2 months, they've improved, they would have said you're crazy. So, Parkinson's is a degenerative progressive disease in nature. It means obviously it's going to get worse as time goes on. So if we can put the brakes on Parkinson's and if we can slow down that progression, then that's progress for a lot of people. And if we can maintain their quality of life, keep them at work, one of the things that most important to me and something I try and sort of connect with patients is if they can continue doing their hobbies, continue going on holidays, continue playing sport, recreationally or whatever it is, then that's a big win. For those people that are actually newly diagnosed and aren't showing many symptoms, that haven't maybe been doing the right exercise, 100% we can see improvement, and that's so exciting for a disease that is been on a downward spiral for, since its discovery, I guess you could say. The fact that for some patients and newly diagnosed, obviously more possible, we can actually see some improvement, and that improvement, the goal is to get that improvement early, educate them around the best type of exercise, medication management, moving well all of the time. So we don't want, one of the key messages I try and get across to my patients is Parkinson's doesn't go to sleep, so neither should your sort of way of thinking and the way you move. So you don't want to be thinking about exercising well, doing your hour of exercise, and then sort of wiping your hands and going, beauty, I've done my PD exercise for the day. We want you always thinking big. And again, that's where you get that nice sustainable change. So again, I'm digressing a little bit, but to answer your question, yes, we can slow it down, and yes, we can actually improve. It all depends on where that patient is on their sort of Parkinson's journey, I guess you could say. And the newly diagnosed, the earlier we can get people diagnosed, which is something that's improving as we go on as well. The earlier we can get these guys exercising, the better the outcomes for them.
Yes, love it. And I think it's good motivation both ways. Even if they can't improve, even if it's slow down, I still think that's good motivation. I can relate to that a little bit in terms of my gums. I went to my dentist 5 years ago, and they're like, your gums are, so bad, and they don't grow back. They can't get better, but if you take care of them now, they're not going to decrease as rapidly. And as soon as my dentist said that, my dental hygiene is amazing at the moment. I've got the best electric toothbrush. I manually floss. I get the best mouthwash 2-3 times a day, never miss it, because even that was motivating. It's like, you're not going to get better, but hey, if you do this stuff here, you are still going to get worse, but it's going to be, as anyone will, but it's just going to be very, very, that was enough motivation to give me a kick in the butt and just really focus on that. So I think it can be similar, that side. Were you going to add something there?
Yeah, no, 100%. And what I was just going to say, that the biggest thing is that gives people control. And I think that for me would be the scariest thing. I think if I was diagnosed with Parkinson's and I didn't know anything about it, you look at the Michael J. Foxes, you look at,
Muhammad Ali.
Muhammad Ali. Yep. You look at those guys and you think, that's where I'm going to end up like, your brain would be working a million miles an hour. And it kind of can feel, depends on how the neurologist delivers it to you, and hopefully they're positive and they can send you on the right track exercise-wise early on. But what we try and do is offer that control and give back a little bit of, give them back the steering wheel. Okay, you've got a progressive disease, but it's not one-way traffic. If you can dedicate yourself, and this is, it's a big task. We're asking people to exercise intensely every day for the rest of their life. That's a huge, huge ask, but having that control, and as you said, knowing that you can actually do something to prevent it from getting worse and to slow it down, absolutely is all empowering. And and then if someone can improve from there, then absolutely, that's motivation in itself, isn't it? And I think a lot of the time, we've got patients that are achieving massive things. We've got a guy at our clinic that's running a half marathon in the Blackmores at the end of the year. We don't want to be the ceiling effect. We don't, as personal trainers and health professionals, we don't want to be the ones putting on the barriers and the ceiling on what someone can achieve. If they can dream big, who cares? If they want to climb Everest Base Camp, or they want to do Kokoda, whatever it is, let's put it on the list, and let's chip away at it. And giving them that hope. There's no such thing as false hope. There's only false promises. So if you can give them that hope and give them that control, then it's massive, because it's a big ask, right? Exercising. I don't exercise every day for a week, let alone for the rest of my life.
Yes, no, agree. All right, question from there, Jason. This is around, I guess, a few ways we can take this. The collaboration or the liaising between, say, a personal trainer, fitness professional, and the exercise physiologist. I'm guessing that's where the liaising comes in. It won't be the personal trainer speaking to the neurologist. It won't be the personal trainer speaking to the GP. It will be the personal trainer speaking to the exercise physiologist. Is that probably how it would work?
Yeah, absolutely. Neurologists are hard people to get a hold of. So if we struggle to get a hold of them, we get a little bit of, we'll send our reports at, 6 monthly reviews or whatever. But most of the time we're actually communicating through our patient and through email. So absolutely, that would be the line of communication there. You know, ideal scenario, newly diagnosed person, patient comes, they've done their 10-week challenge through PD Warrior, through a physio or EP. They're coming to our PD Warrior group classes once or twice a week. Then we go, okay, well, you know, how can we bolster this program? We've got a few pieces of the puzzle, but how can we get you, operating at your maximum? Okay, so you're not doing any resistance training, you're not doing any cardio training, you're only coming in here doing your Parkinson's specific work. So let's refer you to a personal trainer. Then obviously we'll be communicating with a personal trainer about what we want to achieve, and with that cardio and resistance training, trying to PD warriorify that, for want of a better word, and make that crossover into neuroactive exercise. So rather than just have them steady state cardio training doing some sprint work, rather than just doing typical resistance training doing some power work, so that they're, even when they're doing their other bit of homework for their general sort of health and well-being, they're also getting some neuroactivity as well. So I think that is the ideal scenario, and then they're seeing a personal trainer once or twice a week as well. I'm always encouraging our patients to get back to, or to take up, some sort of recreational sport, things like golf, tennis, anything that, again, these are for more of those newly diagnosed, working age patients. But anything like, you think about tennis and golf, it's all about agility. Well, golf isn't, but agility, power, accuracy, balance, and all these things. And if we can find something like that our patients are enjoying and can, get a kick out of, and that's neuroactive, then we're really starting to put together a pretty solid puzzle there that's pretty good long term for that patient.
Yes, sounds awesome. Now, the pre-screening side of things, I'm guessing that's already been done by the exercise physiologist. That should a personal trainer go any deeper, or should they just be like, right, I've obviously got them to fill out a pre-screening form. I've got a letter from the exercise physiologist that's saying, hey, this person is cleared to exercise as long as they do this or don't do this. Is that enough, or should the personal trainer do anything else there? What's your suggestion there?
Look, yeah, we run sort of a typical section of outcome measures. So we'll do like a 10-minute walk, 6-minute walk test, timed up and go, balance assessments, those sorts of things. So we'll review those every 6 months, just as a way of it. Again, it helps to guide what we need to work on and what type of exercises we need to narrow down. But by all means, I think personal trainers should, when they're taking care of their patient, they should run through their own outcome measures as well, just so they can keep track. And it helps obviously in that assessment as well to get a visual on that patient and to get an idea of what they need to work on. So yeah, I think definitely having that referral letter and having some guidance from the physio or EP initially in terms of what we want them to work on. But then by all means, we want our personal trainers and the fitness professionals to be able to take a little bit of ownership over it as well, and run their own outcome measures and assessments as well. So absolutely, I think a little bit of assessment from the personal trainer should be included as well.
Okay, gotcha. Final question around the exercise side of things, then I'd love to hear all about PD Warrior and how fitness professionals can get involved in the program and the next steps. Things to avoid, Jason, or if not avoid, to be careful of. And I guess we can do this in a few different ways. I like to look at it worst case scenarios in some side of things, where it's like, let's say, for example, you're a personal trainer, someone came in, a client came in, they had Parkinson's, and there was an unfortunate accident that occurred, whatever it was. I think it's handy for the personal trainer to be able to say, well, hey, obviously things are going to happen, even with healthy people, but I want to make sure I've done everything in my power to manage that risk. So if you ended up, in coroner's court or in any court, they were like, hey, this person was in your gym under your control, they got injured. If you can say, well, look, I followed the guidelines, I've done this, and this, there's nothing else you could do. But if there was like, well, hold on, but you did this thing here, that could be considered risky, or you should have been aware. Anything you can tell us there? What have we got to be? Is there anything we should avoid? Or if not, what do we need to be maybe a little bit more careful of that we may not have thought of if the person didn't have Parkinson's?
Yeah, I think on that, it comes back to the scope of practice. As long as your fitness professional personal trainer is operating within their scope of practice, then right, they should be all clear. And as long as they're operating under, you know, the guidelines from their allied health professional, then they should be okay.
I'll even expand a little bit on that, because I keep quite a good eye on those ones there. So if you are listing as a fitness professional, you can't diagnose out of scope of practice.
Yeah.
You can't provide rehabilitation programs on your own as a personal trainer. If a physio or EP has said to you, here it is, follow on, then it's okay. And you can't train high risk clients without medical approval. They're usually the big three. If you do any of those three, you're gone as a personal trainer. So that's like a good baseline to start with,
Exactly, and that's, thanks for Jono for sort of clarifying that, because that sort of helps to explain. So the next thing I'm going to talk about, which is, your question was, is there anything we should avoid? I think it comes back to who you're treating, not necessarily what you're doing. It comes back to who you're treating. So Parkinson's is a progressive disease. So you might be referred that patient 2 years.
Yeah.
They've been, at that time of referral, they're appropriate for a gym setting. They're appropriate for you to look after them because they're not falling. As I said, they're in, and in my course, I go through in a lot more detail the stages of Parkinson's, and we sort of talk about, this is where, newly diagnosed, this is the symptoms that would be happening in your newly diagnosed patient, where this is it's going to be more appropriate for a personal trainer. As they progress, this is where maybe not so appropriate. So going back to what I was explaining, might be diagnosed or might be referred to you at, say, 2 years post-diagnosis, feeling okay, not not falling, no balance issues, no postural instability, safe as houses. 2 years down the track, they've progressed a little bit. You might still be seeing them once a week, but they're going to have progressed over 2 years. And now they're starting to show signs of that bilateral involvement. So postural instability, they're starting to drop a little bit in their initiation of gait, and maybe starting to experience a little bit of freezing. And this is where we start to think, okay, gym setting, probably not, because they're starting to, and this is, it's not black and white. And this is where we've got to be sort of, looking at each patient, in their own right. But
even the gym as well, right? Maybe if it's a busy gym and there's weights on the floor, and then maybe, okay, it's not the right gym for you, right? But if it's more a studio, there's one person in there, maybe,
Exactly. And that's where you've got to be able to sort of be able to adapt on your feet, I think, right? And you go, okay, you might notice that maybe they're starting to become a little bit more distracted in class. And as you said, busy gym setting, as I talked about before, dual tasking is a big issue, and lack of automaticity. So when that starts to get worse, these distractions become a bit more of an issue. Then risk of falling goes up a lot. And also, they're just not going to be getting the most out of that session if they're having to deal with all these distractions, having to worry about their balance and that sort of thing as well. So a great example there. Okay, we need to move from this gym setting. We're going to try it in a studio where we've got, quiet space and more space for ourselves. What I would definitely be saying, if you do notice that patient is starting to progress, and sometimes this progression can happen quite rapidly. If someone falls ill for whatever reason, even just with a flu or something like that, and they're off their feet for 2 or 3 weeks, you can see quite a rapid decline. That's not to say that's not reversible. We can try and pick it back up again, but sometimes it's not as steady as a decline as you would think. So need to be on the ball and looking out for that. And I think the first thing to do, if you do notice that, get them to go back to their referring physio or EP for a review, and then you're sweet then, right? If you've referred them back, the physio says, oh no, they just had a little bit of dip. Why don't we they might recommend, okay, going into a private studio, maybe limiting these sort of exercises, maybe concentrating on other things. Then you've got that renewed guidance and that updated guidance from the physio or EP, and then you should be clear then.
Should you, as the trainer, is the patient your go-between? Like, say you say to the client in the personal trainer side of things, hey, I think you should go and see your EP or your physio. The client goes and sees the EP and physio, and then comes back to the trainer and says, yep, no, I'm good as long as blah, 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 blah. Or should the PT get on the phone with the EP or physio, or send an email to the EP or physio? What usually happens there? Or does it just depend?
It just depends, but I think gold standard would obviously be getting some direct contact with from PT to EP or physio, because a lot of the time we're spitting a lot of information at our patients. Again, if they're dealing with a lot of things at the same time, little bit of Chinese whispers. They might misunderstand a few things. They might, misinterpret, what our guidance is. So definitely, I think, gold standard would be having that contact, even if it's just through email or a quick 5-minute chat. That's definitely going to cover both, all bases there. And the scenario might be that, okay, they've progressed a little bit. They're not, they're starting to worry a little bit about balance and falls risk and things like that. So they might go, okay, well, let's come in, let's do an intensive block of physio or EP, come into the group, let's target our balance a little bit more, let's target these sort of areas. And then, as I said, we might be able to get them back to the point where, okay, actually, you know what, you're back, you're safe to go back to the gym with a little bit more guidance and a little bit more direction of what we want to do, and then we'll refer back to the physio. So, at Advance Rehab Centre and with PD Warrior as well, we operate in these intensive blocks. So, if you need to come in and work on something, then best practice says 2 or 3 times a week, intensively working on that specific area, and then we can reassess. So, we don't really want to be seeing anyone just chronically over long term without that specific guidance and specific goals over those short-term periods. And that's where, just that cyclic sort of approach of referring back to whoever referred their patient to you, and sort of keeping that line of communication open, I think is key.
Awesome. Yes, makes sense. Well, yeah, I'd love to hear about PD Warrior, Jason. Let's say there's a personal trainer, fitness professional listening to this, and they're like, okay, I'm interested in this stuff. I want to learn more, or, hey, I want to specialize in something, and this looks like a pretty good topic to specialize in. Or maybe they just need their CECs, and they're like, hey, I don't want to do another circuit class, so let me learn something different here. What can you tell us about PD Warrior from the fitness professional side of things? What are they going to learn? How do they register? Where do they go? Is it online? Is it face-to-face? Give us the full rundown.
Give us the plug. Yeah, sweet. Well, I think probably, but before I say that, I should probably tell you why, I think we've touched on it a little bit, but why we've decided to make this course and why we need fitness professionals on site is because, as I said before, that the rate of diagnosis is increasing exponentially. So people are being diagnosed younger. So I think I'll just trying to find my stats there, 18% of people with PD are working age, so under 50. As we said, 2040 is going to be 17 million people estimated worldwide with Parkinson's. So physios and EPs and occupational therapists can't do it ourselves. The more people we have trained up to tackle this pandemic and prepare ourselves, the better. And that's really the main reason for developing this course is so that we can get more people fighting the good fight and doing the right thing by our Parkinson's patients. So the course, as I said, it was adapted essentially from our physio and EP courses. So probably talk a little bit about PD Warrior in itself. Our patients, from a patient perspective, they come in and they assume that it's just an exercise program. It's just a way of exercising. We sort of have, not to get too salesy here and not too pitchy, but we have our 4 key pillars of PD Warrior, and that is our neuroactive exercise program, behavior change therapy, and that's talking about, like I spoke about before, blurring the lines between your exercise and your general movement. So training our patients into how to move well all the time, not just during exercise. Education is a big factor as well with PD Warrior. So our hallmark program is a 10-week challenge where they're getting exercise videos, but they're also getting weekly educational webinars so that they're more equipped, and their understanding of their condition is the better they understand it, the better they can control it. And also community. So we've got online, it's called Tribe 365, where patients from all around the world can come. They've all, I guess, PD Warrior alumni. They've done a 10-week challenge in the past, and we talk about how to sustain that program, how to come back in, how to add variety and that sort of thing. So that's what PD Warrior is. And essentially my course for fitness professionals and personal trainers is explaining the concepts behind that course. So we drill down a little bit more on the pathophysiology of PD. We look at the PD Warrior concept and the core principles, sort of pushing the concept. We look at effective coaching, which I think is probably one of the most important. And it was one of the webinars and one of the topics that I had most enjoyment in recording and running, because I think it's a very different way, as I spoke about before, coaching a Parkinson's patient, very different to coaching an apparently healthy population. So to give you an example of that, because of this recalibration, because of this disconnect between the patient's motor output and what they've tried to generate. So as I said, if I try to put an 80% effort in, if I don't have Parkinson's, I try and put 80% effort into an exercise, I'm going to get 80%. For a Parkinson's patient, when they try and put 80% in, they're going to get watered down by Parkinson's. They might end up with an output of 50%.
Yeah.
So what we talk about in the course is over exaggerating that effort and really having them focus on good quality. So in order for them to hit 80%, they've got to push it 110, 120%. They've really got to be putting a lot of effort and focus in. And when it comes back to the effective coaching, and I'm definitely guilty of it, I know pretty much probably all fitness professionals and allied health professionals are guilty of the good job factor. And every time you kind of, good job, that looks good, keep it up, that's looking great. The problem with that is if someone's done a half-assed repetition, your patient's done one that isn't 80% and they're looking a bit lackluster, and we positively reinforce that, then they're just going to continue on that trajectory. So we've kind of got to be harsh in a way and go, no, that's not the best you can do. Remember that nasty Parkinson's is playing tricks on your body. It's trying to, change that motor output, take the fight to it, be better, be bigger, be stronger, focusing on these little things. So the way we coach Parkinson's is very different. And even today, after being doing this for many years, I'm still guilty of the old good job every now and then. I think, no, that wasn't actually a good job. That was bad. You can do better. And that's so that's a big thing I'll talk about in the course. And again, I drill down a little bit further into the personal trainer's role. We talk a little bit more about effective resistance training and cardio training, as well as the other concepts behind PD Warrior. And I talk a little bit about scope of practice, and like we've discussed today. So essentially, it's a more in-depth look at everything we've spoken about today, I think.
Awesome. And online, face-to-face?
Sorry, yeah, we're all online at the moment. It's all online webinars, 5-6 webinars. It should take, I think, on the course, it said about 2 days. So I think probably about 4 or 5 hours worth of work, assessment at the end. But we are looking, hopefully when things settle down COVID-wise, we're going to look to open up some level 2 courses, and that will be practical. So that's essentially how the course works for physios and EPs and allied health professionals. They'll come in, they'll do their online education webinars first, and then they come in and do a practical course. And that's what I'd love to do. Hopefully by the end of this year, we'll have a level 2 option up, and we can go through the practical side of things and put everything that you've learned from the webinars into practice.
Awesome. And if a trainer is interested in registering, should they go to the Fitness Australia website, go straight to your website? Any different for you?
I think the easiest way, just Google PD Warrior, or the course is called Exercise in Parkinson's Disease, and it's run by PD Warrior. So if you just Google that, Fitness Australia has the link there, and then I think that directs you to our page and how to register and all that. I think I was just checking before. I had to double check. You get 5 CEC points at the moment, so I had to make sure we renewed that, because that's as I know as well. You need to get those CPD points up, and so hopefully it's a motivating course for people. And I'd love to get some feedback as well in terms of what personal trainers need to know more of. Is there anything in that course that could be dived into a little bit more, or anything else that people would love to know about, because I'd love to update it as we go and keep it as up to date as possible.
Awesome. Well, Jason, that's pretty much all I wanted to get through for today. Is there anything I forgot to ask you, or is there anything you want to finish us off with?
No, Jono, mate, I think that's it. I know I've probably gone off on all different tangents there, and hopefully I've made as much sense as possible and sort of got the message across. But I think the biggest take-home message is we need personal trainers on our side. We need fitness professionals on our side, and the more equipped all our health professionals and all our sort of fitness professionals are in handling Parkinson's, and the more educated everyone is in terms of what Parkinson's is and what we can do exercise wise, the better. And I think, as I said, we need to have everyone on board, because it's going to get worse. We're going to get more and more people. So the more people doing the right thing and doing the best for our patients, then the better. So if it's my course, then great. If it's just listening to this and doing a little bit more research, that's great as well. So that's it's been great, mate. Jono, that's been good fun.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you very much for your time, Jason.
No worries, Jono. Thanks for that. Thanks for having me on.